Good morning, LinkedIn. Good afternoon, Willem. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of Let's Build HubSpot Onboarding with Willem Reus. How you doing, man?
Very good, and very excited for today because we will be talking about the stakeholders, and that's something that, well, is not addressed by a lot of people. And I think that that is worth an episode. What do you think?
I think so too, because I think as we come back to, you know, HubSpot onboarding, right? And I was asked earlier this week, like, could I do a Service Hub onboarding, right? And then not knowing anything about, you know, uh, some specific goals related to why that needs to be done. Um, and so I get the resources of like, here's what an onboarding looks like, and we did some of the checklists you and I have been looking at, right? And it's like, okay, I'm willing to work with the team and whoever's involved to figure out what the onboarding actually needs to look like, what the goals are, like who's involved, and then maybe we figure out, the budget necessary to accomplish those things. But, getting out of these cookie cutter moments involves like all the stakeholders. And what we're going to talk about today is why, even though those like, pre-planned events, like, okay, we're going to do this in 90 days, we're going to check all these boxes. It worked in the world of, okay, it's just Service Hub. There's one person in charge of service at this organization. We're just going to work with them. We're going to ram through and get this stuff done, right? Today, we're going to talk about, the challenges that will inevitably come up and are coming up more and more when that's the approach. And helping people understand that getting everybody aligned as quickly as possible is just paramount if you're looking for success with HubSpot.
Yeah. So I have some customers that really went through an really effective marketing hub onboarding where they put in the work. The main point of contact is in marketing. They also have Sales Hub. Guess what the goal of the company is? To sell something, not to market something, which kind of makes sense if you ask me. And the sales reps are like, yeah, but what does it do for me? And then you have a marketeer saying, we can run campaigns, we can post on social media.
Yes.
And if you're a salesperson, you're like, I do not care.
Oh, I've,
How
I've
does
been
it
asking for
actually
that
help
for
me?
10 years. No, you haven't. Sales
Yeah.
guys aren't asking for that.
Yeah, but if you don't get the right person involved, how much does the average marketeer know about what makes the difference for sales? So I'm not talking about, ooh, roughly what do they do? Well, they sell something. You know something about the product because you can market it, but do you know the intricacies? Do you know the common questions? Do you know also, and that's far more important, the exact sales process, including what is required for a deal? For instance, to go from stage 2 to 3, and yes, deal stages should be named, not numbered, but still you get the idea.
Yeah, and this is the stuff like, again, the data exists at least inside of the head of the sales team, inside of the head of the service team. Leaderships have expectations, and that's where when you just have one stakeholder, like just taking care of onboarding, right? The moment they're out of onboarding, they're in a bad spot because now they've got all these other stakeholders with expectations that we haven't even talked about until then. And then we're like, oh, I need to go build that. And this is like the moment you turn into the accidental admin, probably. Um, but that's where it's like we hesitate to slow things down because we know we'll have to slow it down the more people that we have involved. And so we try to push through as if we can somehow get around that or cut through that. And the reality is, like, if you don't get everybody involved, things will slow down after onboarding instead of
Yeah,
during onboarding, right?
and it quite often does. We all know that a typical CRM implementation takes quite a while, and it doesn't necessarily have to take that long if you align everybody in a very early stage. But that also brings up the human problem because let's say that you are marketing and I am somebody from sales who just tries to be nice to you. Will I tell you, ooh, this sucks? And I don't know what the bloody hell you think you're doing, but you don't understand how this works. And we need to work on this. Or will I tell you, yeah, that social post indeed. And that really is where it's quite important to have the right expectations. But who has the right expectations except for the people who work with it and who can understand the processes? If you don't get them involved, you will just buy a customer portal with everything on it. And you're going to think like, oh yeah, well, the service bit that you mentioned about, we'll get there one day. But what's the power of the platform? Is that you can just start out with Marketing Hub and maybe one day,
Oh, this is why we always bring it back to setting expectations, and especially when you're selling, you know, the product. Like if you get to the point, and this is ultimately why we tried to avoid bringing other people in that were maybe weren't involved in the evaluation process, because you know when you bring them in, you will discover some
yeah,
discrepancies in the data, if you will, or some misalignment. And the moment you ask the questions that we're telling you to ask in terms of let's confirm the business goal for HubSpot, and you get multiple stakeholders and they're not aligned on that, it's like that's going to stop you in your tracks. Like, and it has to, it should, right? You just invested in this tool and people want to use it for different reasons and different things. And like, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter if you create the shiny email or the shiny website or the shiny, sales sequence if nobody's going to use it.
yeah. But if you think about every step as a separate, well, you could say funnel or a really step. I like to see the whole implementation as different steps. And somewhere halfway through the implementation, I'm going to say that is where the customer actually makes the purchase. That means that, let's say you buy the whole platform from me, it actually starts with you seeing an ad thinking like, ooh, this could be something, this is shiny. And then you get a price at one point, you pitch a use case in the company, you will say, it all is relatively simple. I can start using it straight away. And maybe you can. There's a fair chance that you indeed yourself can start using it straight away. What you don't consider is the processes from, let's for now say that you are marketing from sales and how they should be implemented. So, how long does it take before everything truly is onboarded or that the company has really adopted the product? And how long, how much money is involved in there? How much easier would it be if I would be a sales rep or if I would be a sales manager, if you and I would get into a room, get into a big fight, align on the whole thing, and say, you know what? Now let's bring in the service guy and let's have another fight. And let's make sure that at the end of the day, we have a clear alignment about how should the platform actually look like and
Yeah,
what are we going to do with it.
right. Oh man, it's like becoming clear. Like all these all these challenges that we've been dealing with for years, and like why CRM specifically has existed for 25 plus years now, and you still have entire industries not adopting it, thinking they don't need it, not understanding it could be the most important tool, the most valuable tool to bring into the business. And but we show up like after closed one, and it's like, okay, everybody's bought in, no matter who shows up, like they're responsible, like, okay, we're just gonna move forward. But when you think about how we break up like things like life cycle stages is life cycle stages and the all these diagrams that we show, and it's like we like for the stakeholder we have been working with, the person like the champion, the decision maker, whoever, right? They had to go through that journey of awareness, consideration, engagement, right? Everybody who sees HubSpot for the first time has to go through that. And we think we
Yep.
can just cut right through the light, right? Oh, they're already a customer, right? But if you can pull back and say, like, onboarding, like one of the primary goals, like awareness, right? Awareness of what is about to happen. Like, what did we invest in? Why did we invest in it? Creating alignment there. Now we have a chance at adoption, right? So we call these things different stages because it's over here instead of over there, but really it's just again like the whole point of onboarding is like, do you know how to use the tool? Do you know why you're using the tool? Who's going to be using the tool? Like very likely in most organizations, unfortunately, you know, you've probably struggled with buy-in or awareness up to this point because we got to spend money, we got to do this thing, right? I don't want to think about it. Okay, now we're here, we've got it. That is a moment where they have to think about it, and they will. I guarantee you they will if you create the space for them to do that because it's going to have an impact whether we like it or not, right? So helping them do that and creating that awareness, I think, you know, I mean, is that how you feel? Like, is that what you see happening, like in the best case scenarios when people come out and they really have success with HubSpot?
The way I see it, and that question, I'm going to pause there a little bit. Really see success with HubSpot. That that itself alone is for me, well, really a difficult topic itself because what truly is success with HubSpot? And let's for now say that the average customer has a 540% return of investment from HubSpot is what we calculated or something like that. If that's average, is that success? If you can get twice as much, would that not be successful? And would average not be just average at best? So kind of mediocre. So for me, I have questions with that question itself. And what it really boils down to is how are they managing things? Is marketing successful? Because what we see quite a bit, and that brings me a little bit back to what I talked about before, creating a revenue factory that you say, well, every part is successful, but the whole isn't. So marketing is hitting the numbers. Great, but the leads that they create are not converting. Sales is setting up enough meetings. Great, fantastic, happy days. But maybe they even get enough uh, closed one, but the closed one doesn't create enough revenue. So in total, everything may be fine. It may even be that they get to the set amount of revenue that they wanted. It's just that the whole go-to-marketing motion has become a lot more expensive over the last 3 to 4 years. It's just about doubled in price. So if the targets were set then maybe it will look like, ooh, on paper we do everything right. But in reality, we're just not getting there. So for me, it's about who has the oversight and typically that is not one person. So who can really see the complete picture? Why do the biggest companies have a management team and not one person who just, you know, runs the whole shit show? Because that doesn't work that way. Nobody knows everything. And that is how you should treat your company as well. Saying, well, we have this person who is great at a certain thing. They will be able to flag that things are off. Let's get another person from a different department. And sure, the best companies that I work with, they have a RevOps department where it actually is somebody's job to talk to everybody. And typically, this is going to sound as if I throw them under the bus, but typically they don't do that much. They just are aware, they listen to everybody, press a few buttons, but they make very, very sure that they are the right buttons. And with that, they make sure that they don't get the 540% return of investment, but that they get at least 10x. And that is by having somebody in
Yes.
place that actually makes sure that all the stakeholders are heard.
So let's go there. Like, how do we, or how have you seen it work in terms of, I guess no matter what happens before closed one, like what are some techniques maybe that people can use or some questions to ask uh, to like get everybody involved maybe in on a bigger scale than what was originally planned? Like, how do we know, like, do we have everybody in the room that's going to help us be successful here?
That's almost a deep question. I would say if you start off with asking yourself, what is the entire process? And really see it as a factory where everybody plays a role. And if I ask you to put on the tires of a car because together we're going to create a car. And eventually the car is even finished. It's just that some small bit was forgotten, and that's the brakes. I mean, relatively to the car, that's 0.5%, maybe. I mean, the airco is working like it should. The engine works really well. Everything works pretty amazing. But just this small thing, and maybe we're going to say, since that's 0.5%, we're going to give the customers 0.5% of discount. Would you buy that car for 0.5% of discount? Yeah, but you laugh about that, but it really is like, okay, we design a process. Every part should be there. We should really be thinking about, okay, but if, let's for now say we start off uh, with the sale, because that's what a lot of people think about. If you sell with the renewal in mind, and if you would have the sales reps, and I know that I'm saying right now something that's unfeasible, but if you're going to tell the sales reps, if they don't renew for the amount that they purchased or more, you're not going to get commission. That means that if you as a sales rep oversell me and the customer downgrades to, let's say, 70% of the license, you're not going to get commission. I mean, end of story. What you will think about is let's sell them the original sale for the 70% instead of the 100%. That way, they don't downgrade. I will get the full commission, and we have a customer that's quite happy. And maybe I can do an upsell halfway through. If everybody understands the entire process that they are part of and don't just focus on their small bit, there will be so much more alignment, and marketing will be like, yeah, we're going to need sales for this. And right now we have a thing that we're going to set in HubSpot. And you mentioned lifecycle stages. That's for me a touchy subject because, yeah, what exactly is a life cycle stage? What does it represent? And quite often, marketing knows exactly what they think it represents, and sales knows exactly what they think it represents. And then you have somebody, I don't know, let's say in the service department, creating workflows for tickets, and they think like, yeah, but something happened in this ticket, and I can't set it back, so I will just reset it. Who is actually right? And the truth is, for me, I don't care because we can discuss about what life cycle stages are the entire day, and there's a fair chance that we will not agree. But as long as everybody in the company is aligned on what it is, then I don't care what the company aligns on. If it truly works for the company, if there is one motion that the company follows. But how do you get that one motion unless you have the right stakeholders in there?
Yeah. And I love working with professionals like yourself, Willem, because even though I tried to frame it as if, let's say it doesn't matter what's happened before closed one, like you wouldn't let me, right? Because it does matter. Like it's if we're not setting expectations, up there, like before the
Yeah,
sale closes, right? Like let's address that. We have to address that. If we get to this point where those expectations are not met, now like this is why 90 days stuff doesn't work, right? Because now all the effort, as soon as you understand that marketing and sales have different definitions for the stages, like it's all over. Like you got to change the conversation immediately because now
yeah,
it's a different problem that HubSpot cannot solve. Like it will not solve. I mean, the closest you can get, I'll say, like, and and I saw this, and this was my favorite part of HubSpot, right? But we're getting past the days where this like can actually achieve the goal, but like the visibility of just getting data into a system that hasn't existed before sometimes will very, quickly help. So there are wins like that that can be had early where it's just like, okay, instead of trying to execute, like how do we just make this visible so that when we do get everybody in the room, we can put very clearly, like, look, this is how we see things from marketing. This is the perspective we see in sales. Like, it's not anybody's spreadsheets, and we know we're all working off the same data, right? So now let's have an intelligent conversation about how do we align, because very clearly if we try to use this tool and we're seeing it, like we know, like trying to help them, like, wake up a little bit in terms of, oh, okay, this a misalignment is really bad, right? This is
yeah.
something we must stop in our tracks and solve if we're serious about growth, right? Which is usually why we've invested in HubSpot. So, I mean, maybe that's as close as you can get in terms of, I mean, is that fair to say? Like, if we find ourselves in that scenario where, oh, we thought this was going to happen during onboarding, now we have to like take a different direction. Um, is that visibility and creating awareness from that perspective a fair, maybe first step?
Yeah, but I think that I'm gonna give one example of a customer that failed because keep in mind I work with 140 customers. Not all of them are equally successful, and given that 50% of the CRM implementations fail and that very, very few of my customers have truly failed, I don't want to give out on the platform. This is just to show you where alignment can go wrong. There was a marketing department, and the marketing department really wanted to make sure that they could report on the parent companies for everything. This is what we do. This is how many deals were closed on the parent companies. And what you really want is the name of the parent company to be correct and that sort of thing. So what they do is they rename the parent companies to the right companies. So let's just say that there's this Fanta as a company. We're going to rename that to Coca-Cola Corp, which is the parent company of Fanta. So then you have the sales department who used to make quotes to Fanta. Now that same quote is associated to a different company name. If they send out that quote is incorrect. If they have a deal, then all of a sudden, for them, there's spooky action at a distance. And they just said, well, we can't use HubSpot anymore because it is doing crazy stuff that nobody can explain. And maybe just if you align on what everybody is doing, I think that right now you can think of 10 different ways to solve this. So it's not like this is an unsolvable problem, but this is a people problem. And that is why having the right stakeholders and identifying what you're doing, aligning on that is for me one of the most important things.
Yes, paramount. That's why we start. What is current state? What does the process look like? If we know you don't have it mapped out, we know that's hard work. That's the first step, right? And that includes
And who's
everybody.
involved? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and again, that's where like growth involves everybody. If you're investing in HubSpot to help with growth, HubSpot involves everybody, at least from an awareness perspective. It doesn't mean everybody just changes half their day and they're working out of HubSpot. It means they know what's going on, right? Because it touches somebody around them. And if we have misalignment around what it's doing, what it's supposed to be doing, how our teams are using it or supposed to use it, right? It just causes a lot of challenges. And the ones that we've been talking about, here, um, onboarding, man, everybody, getting everybody involved. It's important. And, you know, when you uncover these places, these challenges, like being able to take a step back, right? And sometimes, like, and I know that HubSpot does this, and like usually when you're investing in the tool and you know that that tool is invested in your success and the people, right? It's just an open conversation. Like, look, we all have schedules to meet. We all have, deadlines and the deliverables. But hey, we've just figured out something internally that we need to solve for, right? So this whole schedule this checklist, like, doesn't make sense, right? We need to step back, right? And if that means, I'm not making any promises, but when you work with partners, at least, right? These kinds of things are in play where it's like, hey, we're not ready for this onboarding right now. Um,
Yeah.
so maybe we can do some other stuff with you, or maybe we can reschedule for like 6 months. That's where the challenge is. Like, you just bought it, the license is ticking, right? But if you don't kind of be transparent and address that up front and try to push through the checklist just because we bought it and we're going to have to renew before we know it, like, you just dig the hole deeper and deeper, right?
Yeah. And not to contradict that, but to kind of add to that, what I think you should really do is not just think about, oh, I'm going to push something out, but always start with the end in mind. And maybe you're going to say, you know what, in a year's time, we want also the service department to be on HubSpot. And maybe halfway through, you're going to say, well, we're going to delay that. We're going to push that out. But you still think with implementing Marketing Hub that there will be a full implementation of Service Hub. You still think about, okay, what are the processes? How much should I actually set ready so that when they start, they hit the ground running? Should I, for instance, make a knowledge-based article about what a life cycle stage is? Let's say I'm a support rep. Could you understand my logics that if somebody is an evangelist and they give out on me, that I would try to reset the life cycle stage to everything but evangelist if I don't know what it is? Kind of makes sense, right? So how do we prevent something like that? How do we get the right stakeholders in to make sure that we have alignment, to make sure that everybody has the right knowledge? And would that really change if you push out the launch of Service Hub for your company or the onboarding for Service Hub of your company for half a year? I'm going to say no. So, yes, you are spot on, but still think about the end in mind.
Yes, yes. It's very easy to push stuff out and then not deal with the challenges that cause you to push it out. So definitely understand like it just changes. It's really just a change to the onboarding. Like the checklist, instead of implementing this tool and then using this tool and making sure it's working, like there's still some of that, but half of it becomes, have I met with this person? Have I met with these people? Have we had these conversations to make all the other checkboxes matter, right? And that's where, as you're reflecting, especially we're in the season, I'm getting more requests, and then we see people post they're changing systems, right? Um, excited, like it's so great. Like the sales team and marketing teams, they've done a great job. People come into HubSpot excited, right?
Yep.
How do we take that? How do we help like leverage that excitement to make sure the onboarding's well, to make sure that company, whatever success means for them, this is a part of the onboarding process, by the way, defining success, right? Setting those expectations. Like what we're talking about is how we do that. And so if you're approaching this transition, or maybe it's a new hub, whatever, maybe it's the annual retraining, right? All these different, it's not too late, first of all, for anybody to get involved. And if you've have some challenging stakeholders or some people who still aren't getting it, you know, kind of take a step back from an onboarding perspective. Think, were they ever onboarded? Did they ever know what was going on? You know, find find those opportunities. Find the opportunities to bring those people in to the conversation, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.